Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Melody Gracia, NXT Night team member at Nexus Marketing, and your moderator for today's session. Today's topic is AI and automation, the future of nonprofit technology. And before we jump into the discussion, I want to thank you all for attending this panel. Whether you're attending live or watching the recording, we're very excited to be in touch with you, the mission-driven community. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today to learn from these outstanding experts who I will now introduce. We have Emily Grosha, who is the Vice President of Customer Success at Givesy and Director of Version 2.ai. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, welcome. Thank you.
We have Eric Tamales, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Avid AI. Thanks for joining, Eric.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Also with us is Ryan Harrington, who is the Director of the Data Innovation Lab at Tech Impact. Welcome.
Hey, everyone. Great seeing you.
All right, and finally with us is Stephanie McKee, who is the Chief Technology Thought Leader at Apparo. Thanks for joining this panel, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Right. I also want to acknowledge that we're supposed to have Kyle Ungerman, who is the head of sales at Crowded, on this panel. Hopefully he's able to join us as we go through the session. All right. It's finally time to hear from our panelists. And Eric, I'll have you start us off with the first question. How can AI-driven donor intelligence platforms revolutionize the way nonprofits approach fundraising and donor engagement?
Well, I appreciate you starting with me, but there's some really smart individuals here on this panel as well. If you know anything about my background, I consider myself a recovering fundraiser. I spent the last 25 years on the front line raising quality dollars from impactful donors to focus on our mission. And a lot of the work I did was very manual. It was frontline fundraiser. It was working together. It was getting to understand who a donor is and what their passion and their why and what they're going to be able to contribute to our organization. And today there's a whole new world, right? Post-COVID, post the pandemic, post ways to be able to fundraise. Our budgets are decreasing. Giving, I always say, is giving is declining, but generosity is on the increase. There's a lot of different stats and data points around it. And really the big challenge today is how do you have insight to be able to go directly to the donor? Because at the end of the day, giving is ultimately personal. And people who want to give to our charitable organizations, it matters to them, right? Like you're getting the information already from Amazon or Target or Google and all those different things. And that's a consumer space. But at the end of the day, donors and nonprofits need to be able to act like a for-profit business and be able to connect with our donors and have that impersonal messaging, right? And that's where technology, that's where infrastructure, that's where AI, and that's where everything else. What we do at Avid is very unique in the space, actually, because it's the first one ever. It's the first agency in the cloud where we bring in all of the data sets so that we can have a full picture of our quote-unquote customer or donor or constituent or volunteer to understand what their social is, what their website is, what their volunteer is, what their giving is, and really have that clarity through chaos. And I think that's where you can start utilizing easier tools with like automation or just understanding the why, being able to go. And so now you can take that donor journey, instead of it taking 18 months, it can now go into a month, a week, a day, whatever it be, in minutes, to be able to focus in on that giving for that personal relationship.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for starting us off, Eric. All right, Emily, over to you. What's your take on this?
Sure. So we look at the possibilities of AI in terms of the ability to manage donors that aren't already being managed in human relationships. So if you think about the donor pyramid, top 1 to 5% of that pyramid are being managed in a gift officer portfolio. Like Eric, a lot of our team, myself included, came from nonprofit fundraising. And those human-to-human relationships are incredibly important. And I love the way that Eric is talking about, bringing data into those relationships, into how you manage the larger pyramid of donors. And you can do that same thing. What we do at version 2 is bring that individualized relationship further down into the pyramid. So version 2's autonomous fundraisers give you the ability to manage individual donor relationships just a little bit deeper, those rated but unassigned folks. And really, AI in general is giving us the opportunity to give donors a more personal experience. And with autonomous fundraising, that two-way engagement, individual cultivation, individual stewardship, solicitation in the same way that a human brings that to their own gift officer portfolio, but something we just could never do before. We could never hire enough fundraisers. There's certainly trends in fundraising in general, and one of those trends is in the ability to hire. We have partners that have 40 open positions, 20 open positions, and yes, it would be great to fill all those positions tomorrow, but the reality is they can't. And AI and autonomous fundraising is giving us the ability to continue to manage donors a little bit deeper into that pyramid.
Thanks, Emily. Eric, Kyle, glad you're able to make it. Welcome. What are your thoughts on AI and its use in fundraising and engagement?
I think I was let in as a participant before, so thanks for having me on the panel. I think it's definitely moving in that direction. Of course, I mean, at Crowded, we're more so on the fintech side, so less on the actual donor management side of things. But from speaking to some clients of ours, they're always asking us about tools like this, and clearly they know that this trend is happening. Without getting too much in the weeds, because you guys are more on experts on this, I would just say that people are obviously asking about this, but they're very just used to this old school way of doing this donor relationship stuff. So what we've seen is just slow adoption, but it's there. They're excited for it. It's just a matter of getting them excited and confident about using this type of AI for donor management. On our side, we're in a completely different sphere than the management side. But yeah, that's what I've seen very quickly.
Thanks, Kyle. All right, Ryan, what's your take on this?
Sure. Similar to Kyle, this is not really my area of expertise in donors particular. In fact, our team really helps out nonprofits think more about the broader operations side of things and the programmatic side of things, and do a little bit less on the donor side of things as we're helping them think through how to bring their mission to life. But with that said, just broadly speaking, like the benefit of AI in general is helping you to automate and surface things that are harder for you to typically see. It's making your life a little bit easier. And certainly for nonprofit organizations who have a lot of donors, that personal touch really matters. That's something I've heard from the partners that we've worked with is just really, really important for them. So I think, the experts here, Eric and Emily, really drove home those points for sure.
Ryan, all right, Stephanie, final thoughts on this?
Thank you. So I'm similar with Ryan. I am not a donor expert, but we do educate and upskill nonprofits to adopt different AI technologies, and particularly around the donor engagement. Because you think about the capacity that nonprofits have are very limited. And what excites me most about AI is the ability it has to increase productivity and save time within an organization, whether it's donors, volunteers, or operations, etc. And just thinking about the donor intelligence around AI, you have, I think Emily mentioned personalization. It really increases that engagement with the donor and automates a lot of tasks where staff can free up time to focus on more of the relationship building and the trust with the donors.
Stephanie, all right, we're off to a great start. Ryan, I'll have you start us off with the next question. How can nonprofits effectively integrate AI and automation into their existing technology infrastructure to maximize mission impact?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's really two aspects of this to think about. One is thinking about the technology side. So one of the things our team is really thoughtful about is kind of assessing where every nonprofit is from a data maturity perspective, and understanding like every organization is coming into this from a very different place. There are some organizations who like their tech stack is like a file cabinet. And there are other organizations on the other end of the spectrum who are really advanced and have data warehouses, and they've invested in that infrastructure. And so your AI strategy is going to directly correlate to where on that infrastructure spectrum you actually sit. I think the first step for integration for a lot of folks is going to be picking a platform that's right for them. So it's like, great, are you a Microsoft shop? You might want to look at Copilot, and you might want to be selective to start with about the people on your team who are going to use a productivity tool like that. And that like gets your feet wet a little bit. You start to identify the use cases internally that are going to help you free up resource time. And then you start looking at the more complex things, the automation types of tasks that are going to like really accelerate the pace at which you can do those things. And those could be anywhere from kind of building out an agent that's going to help you with simple tasks to much more complex agentic systems that are almost automating things for you. But whatever you're doing, all that has to tie back to your mission and being thoughtful about like the ethics and implications of that and how that could impact the communities that you're serving just needs to be at the forefront at whatever work you're doing.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, Eric, over to you.
I'm on mute. So yeah, I'll say this: the unique thing about automation is that I'll echo a little bit of what Ryan was sharing, was like making sure that you're doing the right choices and identifying what you need from an organization from standpoint. My background, I come for the last 4 years. I worked at an organization, a great CRM that's focused in on responsive fundraising. It's actually Virtuous, and so Virtuous actually does automation that actually builds into the system and everything else toward that area. And so I really want to make sure, first and foremost, I tell nonprofit leaders all the time of start with your home base. Start with your home base. That's your CRM. Virtuous isn't for everybody. Like you said, Ryan, some are IBM, some are Microsoft, some are whatever else. But find out who your home base is and make sure that whatever technology you're talking to starts to be able to connect to that home base. A lot of times we as nonprofit leaders, and don't get me wrong, I'll fall on the sword, I did not know how to buy technology. And technology salespeople don't know how to sell it to nonprofit leaders. So like there's a big gap between both sides of the coin here. And so take your time. Take your time, do an audit, find out what works for you, what works for your organization. Just because what happened works for an organization down the street for you doesn't mean it matters and it works for you guys, because every one of us are special unicorns when it comes to nonprofit and raising money for our special missions and everything else of that nature. But at the end of the day, you have to take those baby steps and you have to be able to figure out, what does AI mean, right? Like Ryan's talking about some really great products, and those are GPT and generative predictive and all the different things. There's other routes that you can do to like having a more advanced models, or you can just do the traditional route, which I actually value. And I think we can do this in a lot of the systems that we currently have, of just starting small. And I really do believe, and I say this a lot, like at the end of the day, is giving matters. Multi-channel giving matters even more today. Just because someone gives through the phone or the mail or in person, don't say in that channel. The best automation, I still think to this day, is just a simple birthday message. So imagine for a moment, 3 days before someone's birthday, a postcard gets sent to Ryan and saying, "Hey, happy birthday, Ryan." That morning of, an email comes from Emily to Ryan as the gift officer saying, "Hey, happy birthday." And then Emily gets a task assignment as a gift officer to say, "Hey, I'm going to give Ryan a phone call because today's his birthday." That was multi-channel, that was personal, that was impactful. And the only thing that was done in the background is creating automation. And you can do that in a lot of systems that you have. And that's AI. And that's automation. And I think if we do that, we can raise the generosity and be able to do that on a whole host of different platforms. We do that at Avid. We do that at all time with different text messaging and social media and Google ads and email and text. But those things, you just have to take that first step and be able to go down that path. I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry, Malu.
Thanks, Eric. I love that. Emily, tips on how to effectively integrate AI and automation.
I was hoping I would be next because, Eric, I think you could come work for Givesy too, because birthday messages are one of our most successful engagements for the autonomous fundraiser too. Absolutely agree with you there. And really to, take some of these analogies that we just heard, in our opinion, you can be what I think Ryan sort of referred to as maybe more on the filing cabinet side of your tech stack. You can be pretty far down that that scale and not be super advanced in the data that you have collected, as long as you understand your technology's minimum data requirements. And some AI software is going to require a lot of data. It is going to require you to be a little bit more advanced, but some is not. And what we have found is actually when it comes to agentic AI, which is what we do, it is far more important to start to learn about what your donor feels about your organization today than it is to analyze all of their different patterns of giving and feelings that they had 10 years ago. So what someone gave to 10 years ago, or how they first started giving, if they're a university alum, where they graduated from, and every organization they participated with while they were at school, far less important to why they're connected today or how it's impacted their life today. And so to just start, if you have the ability to contact that person, if you have a little bit of giving history, that's a great place to start and start to learn and build on that data, so that your AI then can learn from the most current and the most relevant engagement data from that donor right now. Not worry, paralyze yourself because you don't have perfect data from the last 10 years.
Thanks, Emily. All right, Stephanie, thoughts on this?
Sure. I like the comment Eric made around start small, because a lot of the nonprofits that we work with, they are, we did a couple of workshops last year, and the very common comment is, I'm scared of AI. It intimidates me. So just thinking about the AI strategy, assessing your needs, identifying repetitive tasks, things that take a lot of time on a daily basis, finding ways to automate those and make it easier on you. Also thinking about AI readiness assessments that are out there. Apparo is actually creating a very high level AI assessment that we are going to put online soon, so be on the lookout for that. And I think two of the most important things is getting the leadership buy-in and upskilling the staff, like continuous, it's like cybersecurity awareness. But now AI is should be a big part of awareness for staff. And then, most importantly, too, is thinking about the IT governance and ethics and implementing policies for your organization.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, Kyle, what would you add here?
I mean, everyone added such great stuff before, so it'll be hard to follow up. But one thing with us, at least, is, again, right, because we're on the banking side for nonprofits, we do a lot on the compliance side for nonprofits. So it's a lot of tax filings and 990 filings for a lot of our organizations that we work with. And we have an AI integrated system that automatically files 990s for them. Now that's, a pretty big deal for a lot of these nonprofits, because if anyone, watching this has had to done a 990, takes a lot of time and consuming. So for that part, it's great. But just to like a quick point on the actual integration side and how it leads back to what I'm saying here, I think a really important thing that, I don't know if someone mentioned, but I don't know if we have yet, is cleaning up the data. So I think that if you are going to implement a lot of AI and look at different systems in place, Copilot, everything else you want, get buyership from buying from the owners, amazing. But the first and foremost, most important thing is clean that data up, because it's just going to make that AI integration much smoother and easier. And at least on the tax side of things, we ensure that, all that data is clean, so that when we do turn on that, AI integrated aspect of the nonprofit, it can work seamlessly, or else, it can be a little bit messy. So that's one thing I'd say.
A great point. Thanks, Kyle. All right. Very quickly, I'd like to encourage our live audience to start submitting your questions in the chat so we can address the topics that are relevant to you and your team. All right, here's our next question. And Stephanie, I'll have you start us off with this one. In what ways can intelligent gift documentation management systems streamline the donation process and enhance donor experience?
Sure. It kind of goes back to the first question, the donor intelligence systems. Creating gift processing, automating this can, I guess most importantly, I'll go back to what I preach and share all the time is productivity and saving time by automating your thank yous, your reminders, or going back to the birthday example that Eric and Emily shared, and just creating that personalized experience with the donors and the stakeholders out there.
Kyle, over to you. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't know much about it, if I'll be completely honest. I do want to be honest about this. We don't do much with this. I know there's a bunch of other companies that have all sort of AI agents that help with the system, but if I'm going to be completely honest, we don't really touch this, and I'm not too knowledgeable about this. So that's my honesty there.
Thanks, Kyle. Ryan and Eric, any other thoughts about this?
I am not the right person for this question either. Tagging in with Kyle on that one.
I am the right person. So I think I can answer it. I'm going to go back to what Stephanie said about just being able to thank and appreciate our donors. We did a study with our friends from Next After. If you don't know who Next After is, they do a lot of great experiments, A/B testing. They've done about 7,000 experiments of what's working, what isn't working, donation page, copy, content, all the different things that we need as fundraisers. One of the things that they did is they worked with us on identifying, basically brought over a whole host of nonprofit CRM data and information to identify how do people acknowledge and appreciate. And like I said, I'm a longtime fundraiser. So I start back at the beginning of Penelope Burke, who wrote the book on donor-centered fundraising. She always said in that book, and I've known her for many years, is focus on 3 key things after someone makes a contribution. You want to acknowledge their contribution. You want to basically say, hey, I received your gift. 2, you say, hey, I really want to say thank you. I appreciate your gift. And 3, I want to talk about the impact of that gift to be able to focus on generosity. And if you want to go even further, you want to ask for that second gift to be able to do that. And that continues down that personalization. And what we identified in that study from Next After is, this is crazy, 27% of nonprofits do not send a receipt to their first-time donor within 7 days. 27% has not given a receipt to acknowledge a gift in the first 7 days. 51% did not send a thank you card in that same time period. So over half of nonprofit organizations aren't sending out a receipt and aren't thanking. 33% of organizations did not send any cultivation whatsoever in that first 90 days. And 51% didn't even ask for the second gift. And I will tell you straight now, I'll put a stake in the ground here in Washington, D.C. and say, if you did one of those 4 things for your nonprofit organization, your donor retention is going to go through the roof. And the reason how you can do this, because we have limited staffs and budgets and things that are going on, is through automation, is using the tools that are out there, using technology as a resource to enhance the work you're doing. All 4 of those things you can do through an automation. Someone makes a contribution. And Kyle, I love what you said earlier, is the fact that the reason why people aren't doing those 4 things is because they don't trust the data. They don't trust the data. CCS came out with that report with Philanthropic Pulse last year. It said over 68% of gift officers don't trust the data that's in the system. So why would they write a thank you card to Eric with a C, but my name's actually Eric with a K, right? Like, you're going to destroy those relationships. So those things matter, and you can do it through automation. Off my soapbox. Sorry, Malou.
Thanks for sharing, Eric. All right, Emily, let's expand on this and take it from a different angle. How have donors responded to engaging with virtual engagement officers?
Yeah, sure. So the version 2 virtual engagement officer engages with donors completely autonomously. So just a little bit different use of AI, more agentic than generative, in terms of not just making a human more efficient or taking process to make that more efficient, but do something completely and fully autonomously, make the decision and actually finish up with that action. And the response to donors, we've only been doing this for about 6 months. Truly incredible. So we keep a dashboard on our website, version2.ai, of all of the interactions, the data that the VEO is having, or the virtual engagement officer is having with donors. So far, there's about 3,500 engagements. I think one of the most interesting points is that opt-out rate is only at 0.13%. And that was absolutely 6 months ago what everyone thought, oh, donors are going to opt out. No one's going to want to engage with AI. But when you're taking donors that are not already engaging with humans, they are just getting marketing communications. To Eric's point, maybe not anything, maybe not a thank you. We have a another platform at Givesy that sends automated pledge reminders, and we saw similar stats. Some organizations were like, oh, we actually didn't send any pledge reminders this year. We just crossed our fingers and hoped that they remembered. Or we have no idea when the last time we did that was. So these donors are not getting anything personal. And so when you do offer them the opportunity to sit, when they receive a happy birthday message that they can engage with in two-way and say thank you, and then hear something back, when you ask them why they give, or you ask them why they chose a particular fund to give to, they really are feeling heard, they're feeling appreciated, and maybe even more so delighted when their next communication references their last one, right? When there's a memory to that communication, like when you're communicating with a human. And so, they're getting these engagements without always a solicitation. My favorite story is a donor who made an annual commitment every year, and she turned that into a monthly commitment after the VEO just started engaging with her and didn't ask for a gift. And she said, I really appreciate you asking and not asking for a gift. I appreciate you asking about me and my connection with your organization without asking for a gift. And I think that has really, to me, been the heart of these interactions.
Thanks, Emily. All right, this is the last of my questions before opening it up to our wonderful audience. I've seen a few questions have come in, but if you have questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat so we can address them during Q&A. All right, Kyle, here's our next question. What strategies can nonprofits employ to overcome common challenges associated with implementing AI or automation?
Great question. I mean, look, I think an answer that perhaps the rest of the panel can talk more about is on the technical side of things, but I almost want to talk about on the psychological side. I mean, AI is scary, and I think a lot of people kind of push that to the side. Or, technically, how do we create a strategy to best, implement this into our tech stack or system? But I think a big part of that is having trust from your members, your employees. I mean, don't make AI as scary as it's set out to be. I think it really is. And, going back to what I was saying before, with our specific product and doing, AI tax filings and whatnot, that's taking away a job potentially from someone else. And, it's the way the world's working, but there's a sense of kind of trust and a sense of, don't fight AI. AI is not this like evil, robot taking over the world like we've grown up seeing in pop culture. But, let's put a nice kind of face to AI and see how it can enhance us and help us. So I think my strategy that I would say less technically is find a way to like have your members, for lack of a better way of saying it, fall in love with AI and not be scared of it and kind of welcome it with open arms.
Thanks, Kyle. All right, Stephanie, what strategies would you recommend?
Well, definitely, I would suggest just being forward thinking and creating an AI strategy. And I go back what I mentioned a few minutes ago on it's important to get that leadership buy-in and create AI, staff awareness around AI. I also would recommend maybe creating a small committee or task force to focus on AI initiatives within your organization. What are some use cases that could be easy wins for you? Whether it's, creating a summary of meeting notes or I use AI to create, you can actually create an AI policy. And that would take me days if I didn't have a tool to start, my blank page. So you can save, a lot of time, hours, days using AI. And going back to what Kyle said, don't be scared of it. Have fun with exploring with AI. It's absolutely amazing how it can enhance our day-to-day job and create so much productivity.
Thanks, Stephanie. Eric, what challenges have you seen and how to overcome them?
putting in the chat a great resource as well. I want to go back to what Stephanie just said. Having an AI policy is like, most nonprofits have a gift acceptance policy, but we don't have an AI policy. I serve on the advisory board for fundraising at .ai, which is the ethical and responsible approach of how we're going to bring AI to the nonprofit space. There's great resources on there. There's some AI policy templates on there. Please go use them and see what it works. Because like I said earlier, what matters, what works for you may not work for another organization, to be able to come up with what goes through that different area. I'm going to go a step even further and starting small. I'm going to tell a personal story because it's a small room. And I know my wife is not watching, so I can share this story in this nice little environment. So I've been married 18 years. I've been together 23 years. And just last month, I was on the road. If you know me, I travel a lot. I was on the road. I wanted to send flowers to my wife. And so I went online, I bought flowers, and on the bottom of the little website, it's a little character count, says 110 characters. What message do you want to, be able to share with her? She knows I'm not a romantic person. She knows I'm not sensing feeling. I'm very much thinking, judging. I'm an ENTJ, so I'm straightforward in having those different conversations with her. But I wanted to try something new. So I went into my GPT, and yes, I'm very polite with her. I have a conversation with her. I say please and thank you, because to Kyle's point, when the robot uprising happens, I want her to remember I was nice. I'm the Eagle Scout in me. And so at the end of the day, I go through and I start typing this Valentine's Day message. I was like, I have 110 characters. I want to make it romantic. No, try it again. No, try it again. And he tried to pivot to this way. I went to this prompt over here. I spent 30 minutes coming up and crafting the exact phrase in that message for my wife's card. And that afternoon, after it was sent, I called one of my best friends, and I was like, I kind of feel weird. I feel like it wasn't genuine. It wasn't anything. It was like done by my AI robot. And what was interesting to me is my best bud said to me, he's like, Eric, you'd be walking up and down that Hallmark aisle for hours to pick a generic message. And like, then you'd have to write something on it. And I was like, all right, cool. Let's just test it. Let's see on Friday when I get back into the house to see if she recognizes the fact that like my GPT wrote it instead of me. And I have fun to report that she didn't call me out on it. I thought she was. I was going to figure she was going to be like, oh, you're not romantic, but she loved the message. And then I was curious. I was like, let's just do it again. So 2 weeks ago, I did it again. I did the whole same process and everything else. And again, she didn't come back to me and say, hey, a robot wrote this. You didn't write this. This isn't you. To Emily's point, like, we want to have those genuine relationships and everything else. And at the end of the day, you have to bring AI into your personal life, into your professional life. How many of us as grant writers have to write those number of characters in a block or a specific message? But like, what I did is I trained my GPT to now know who I am. It's listened to everything that I did. I spent 60 minutes on each one of 30 minutes on each of them. So now it's learned my personality. I have to go back and correct it, all those things. But what I'm saying is take it small and make it personal in your personal lives. And then it will naturally fall into your professional lives. And don't tell my wife, by the way. This is our secret.
Thanks, Eric. All right, Emily, over to you.
So I think you've got to look at your internal challenges that you need to overcome and your external with your donors, right? So internal, I think that the way that we have found that teams adopt AI best is if they understand it. If they understand how it works, if they understand why as an organization you're using it, and if they don't feel threatened by it. And I say threatened by it because for what we do, when you talk about a virtual engagement officer, the initial reaction when you say the word, you don't say anything else, is, oh, the robots are going to take my jobs, right? The robots are taking over the world. And that's so not the purpose of a virtual engagement officer. It is not to replace a human. And it is strictly to address a population that is not getting addressed with human one-to-one attention. And I think that if your team understands that, what gift officer doesn't want a donor handed off to them that is already engaged and warm and we know a lot about them? Because if you're a gift officer and you're going through your portfolio reviews and you're bringing in 20 new people for the next year, if they've never at all been engaged in two-way conversation, if we don't really know a whole lot about them, those are really hard people to get a hold of, and they're really hard people to start to learn and understand. And so if your team internally, and mine is just an example, but if they are understanding how AI is going to make their job better, their impact on the organization better, then you have adoption, right? Exactly, to Eric's story, if they understand how it is working, that is what's going to drive that internal adoption. On the external side, for us, we believe transparency is incredibly important. And, when you have a donor working directly with AI, not AI creating, your emails or your graphics or things like that, but if you have a donor working directly with AI. It's important that that donor knows that that's what they're working with. If you feel a little icky about what you're doing, then it might be a little icky, right? If you don't, and you are saying to your donor, this is AI that you're interacting with, and here's why, as an organization, we've chosen to embrace it, then that's the side of AI that you want to be on. That's the right side of history. If an organization's mission, if the AI is able to really change the trajectory of that organization's mission, then that's something you should be proud of, and that your donors should be proud that you're embracing, especially in the nonprofit industry, where we have a history of being 10 years behind for profits. That, this is an opportunity. And I love that every nonprofit conference I go to is talking about AI. And that's showing that we're ready to be on the forefront of something and define how it impacts nonprofits ourselves, instead of letting for-profits define it for us and then having to go back and sort of retrofit what we're going to do with that technology.
Emily. All right, Ryan, what other strategies do you recommend?
Sure. So I think people covered a lot of great strategies here. I think I just want to re-highlight the start small concept that's come up in different ways in almost everyone. I'll be number 5 to say that. But like, you can't boil the ocean. Having a pretty clear, like, this is the highest leverage thing that we can do, or this is the team at our nonprofit that's going to trial it for us, or whatever else it might be, is a really, really effective strategy. And I think part of the reason for that is that it's really important for people across the organization to see success with it. Right? AI means a lot of different things. I actually see a question about that in chat that I think is worth talking about later. And so giving people this taste of like, hey, it can be effective for this, and this is how we did it, lets it grow across the organization in a better way than just being like, here's the tool, go use it. That leads to kind of the second piece, which is around the training aspect of it. Some people are going to adapt to technology quickly and try to find every best practice to do it as well as possible. They'll do that search on their own. But bringing in effective training to help people use the tools more effectively is way better. I think an easy first step for organizations is like prompt engineering training. Just like, get the most out of this tool by asking please and thank you. That is a phenomenally good strategy. Like, studies show it works. But like, frankly, if you can be a good technical writer, you can be a good user of AI. And then the third thing that is a pitfall that I'll highlight is just, how do you build an effective culture around it? So I think a place that people get stuck on is like, internally, people are like, they feel icky about saying, hey, I used AI to write this, where actually like a good leader is going to embrace and say like, hey, tell us when you used AI to write this, not because it's a punitive thing, but actually because we can put a different layer of we can look at it more deeply, right? We can look out to see if the language feels right. And so, we can appropriately trick Eric's wife or whatever the case is. We can look at it to make sure that there aren't hallucinations, that like, there aren't these little details that the AI is a little overconfident with when it's telling us about it. But you have to have the culture set up in the first place to make sure people feel comfortable with that. All the other stuff, good governance, ethics policies, all those things, those are like table stakes. You've got to have that stuff. But I want to highlight those other things too.
I love that, Ryan. Thank you. All right. We have a couple of audience questions here. And Eric, I'll have you start us off with this one. AI and automation are terms that are often used interchangeably. Would you say that AI and automation are the same thing?
I'm curious what everyone else would share, but like, I think AI, there's automation a part of AI, yes. And I think I would consider it more about the I call it traditional AI. And I think it's been around for a long time. I think we all, how many of us heard of a small company that we're probably all using called Netflix? Netflix is using AI. And so when you finish a television show and like you watch Stranger Things, it's going to listen to what you just completed and look at the preferences and your personalization. And it's going to suggest new TV shows based on your personal preferences. And that's automation and that's AI, as well as the fact that like it's listening, right? And so if you wanted to trick your algorithm and start watching some more documentaries, you can change the entire trajectory of your what you're watching. And I think that also collides with, what we do in nonprofit. Many times people come into organizations because they're passionate about dogs and the animal shelter or whatever it might be. And maybe they started growing up and now they're more focused on cats, so now you have to be able to start going back to and listening to the behaviors and the personas and utilizing automation to be able to do that. And so I do believe it's underneath that traditional area, Malou.
Yeah. Do you mind if I jump in?
Eric. Anyone? Yes.
Yeah. So, and I think about this a lot. It comes up on our team pretty frequently. I want you to think back to like 4th grade math when your teacher introduced the idea that like a square and a rectangle are related to each other, but aren't exactly the same thing. I think it's like that. Like automation is the rectangle and AI is the square. A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. So like automation is this really broad category. And like it exists in a lot of different ways, from technologies like robotic process automation to like if you're thinking about data things like extract, transform, and load processes to get into a data warehouse. Like there's like a lot of details in that about what it is. And then AI is this other umbrella term. And one thing I want to call out with AI, Eric kind of alluded to this, is the definition of AI changes every day. So right now, if I say AI, everyone automatically thinks ChatGPT and other generative AI stuff. But to Eric's point, 5 years ago, when I said AI, what I actually meant was Netflix's recommender system. That is still AI, but we just don't call it that anymore. We call it machine learning. Like the language has changed. In fact, there's like 8 or 9 technologies that all fit under the AI umbrella that like I would probably call AI, but I don't think that's what people mean when they say AI today. And that can get confusing. So like square rectangle, think back to that. That's the relationship.
I want to follow that because I saw something at a conference the other day and I thought it was the most fascinating thing. Some gentleman put on the screen was how long it takes someone to become a doctor. It takes like 16 years. To become an attorney, it takes 8 years. To become a trade, it takes 6 years. To get, all these different things. But AI has only been around for maybe 3 years. So if anybody's out there saying they're an expert, don't believe them because, but we're all still learning. We're all still going through it. And I just think it's so fascinating that, to your point, Ryan, it's still a new concept and it's a new term and we're still growing with it. So I love your analogy, by the way. I'm using that.
Please do. Steal it. I'll steal yours. I'm going to tell the Rose story. It's going to be great.
Thanks, Ryan and Eric. Anyone else want to add to that? All good? All right. We have a couple more questions, but unbelievably, time is going by so quickly. So we're going to have to wrap up this portion of the panel so we can stick to our schedule. Now, if you have more questions for our panelists, please complete the survey that will be dropped in the chat to indicate which panelists you have questions for, and we'll make sure to connect you with them after the session. I have one last question for our panelists to wrap up the session with, and Stephanie, I'll have you start us off with this question. What future trends do you foresee in AI and automation that will significantly impact the nonprofit sector? And let our audience know where they can find you and your organization.
Sure. So I think future trends, as Ryan and Eric were just saying, AI or generative AI is still really new to all of us and it's learning, and we are learning along the way. So I think it's just going to get better. And it's going to be able to, enhance our jobs as we continue to learn how it can help us be more productive in our day-to-day. And I came across, I received an email a couple of days ago, and it was a tech company that had put what looks like a chat bot, but it was like an avatar, and it was a virtual AI generated avatar that looked very like a real person. And you could communicate with it by typing or with your voice through their website. And I was just in awe. I was like, this is so cool. So I sent it out to our leadership team because we were getting ready to redo a website. I was like, wouldn't it be so cool if we had this on there? It's very innovative and forward thinking, and not sure how much it cost. Not sure it's in the nonprofit budget, but I'm going to find out because I just see things going in that direction. So yeah, I'll pass it to the next.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, Emily, trends or key takeaways and how to find you.
Sure. So Stephanie, our company, our virtual engagement officer, actually uses avatars if the partner chooses to be the face of their virtual engagement officer. Doesn't interact two-way. You don't sit in the screen and talk to it, but it does deliver messaging. And it is cool is the best way, I think, to describe it. It is cool. Eric mentioned Netflix. When the first technology company I worked for, was a company called Gravity, which was the first AI tool in the nonprofit space. And machine learning really was AI. That's what AI was then in 2017. It was just learn. I mean, we use Netflix as an example to teach people what AI was, because everyone did that then. And that's really evolved from, machine learning being AI to generative AI, chat GPT, assistive AI, to now what we're seeing a lot of in 2025 is agentic AI. We've seen the Salesforce commercial with Matthew McConaughey over the Super Bowl, right? So that's the direction that, we anticipate AI going. A few months ago, our first innovation partner champion came from HR. And she wasn't a major gift officer. She wasn't in prospect development. She said, I'm interested in a virtual engagement officer because I do see this as an HR function. I think that we are going to be seeing, digital labor and digital technology sitting in that HR function. We have our human team and our digital team. And actually recently someone just had a conversation about how, they didn't have a management opportunity open for a particular individual, but they are going to have that individual oversee their virtual engagement officer as sort of step one of managing teams. And so that digital labor and AI and agentic AI as a function of HR is really where we see teams going and building out those digital labor plans for the next 3 to 5 years. And Malou, you said, what was the other thing you asked us to?
Oh, let our audience know where they can find you and your organization.
Thank you. You can find version2.ai is our website. We are powered by our larger parent company called Givesy, which is givesy.com. You can find us all over LinkedIn. I believe you posted that link over in the chat as well. Please follow us there.
Thanks, Emily. All right, Ryan, future trends or key takeaways and how to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Emily stole my thunder, and I think someone was going to, because I think agents over the course of the next 1 to 3 years are going to be the primary thing that you're going to see grow more and more. You're seeing AI embedded into almost every platform that you might touch. And so the next thing is, how do you build the tools with your AI to help solve the problems that you have organizationally? And they range in complexity from the real simple, just let me make it easier to look up my HR policies, to things that are going to operate more autonomously and like check your email and do an action out of that. It's like, how do you automate ambiguous tasks, right? It goes back to that piece, things that don't have a direct one-to-one answer. That's like the kind of secret sauce of AI, kind of above and beyond anything else. I think the other thing you'll start to see happen is models continue to grow incrementally in terms of like capability. I don't think we're going to see like a big change moment, which means one's going to come out tomorrow and I'll be proven wrong immediately. But I think you're going to see incremental growth and reduction in things like hallucinations. They're going to get a little smarter in a subtle kind of way. In terms of reaching out to us, we love working with all nonprofits. In order to help them think about these things, you can go to techimpact.org. I love that my LinkedIn was posted up there, so you can just jump in there. That's always an easy way to find me too. But love chatting with everyone today.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, Kyle, over to you.
Yeah, I thought about this one. You guys all made really good points here. When I think of the future of nonprofits, absolutely, there's the whole operational side. But what I really think it's going to be interesting is on the storytelling side. I think that AI is really going to impact the different ways nonprofits tell their stories in a more personalized approach. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when those first, Doll A videos came out and you were like, this is a Hollywood production, that I just typed, a sentence and this incredible 2-minute video was created. I just think the storytelling side of what your cause and mission is as that nonprofit will change in the future with AI. And it's something I'd be super excited about. So yeah, I'd just say it more so on the storytelling side. I think that's really where it's exciting because it's more fun. I mean, I know all the back end stuff is important, but I think on that forward-facing, customer-facing side, it's cool. You can find me also on LinkedIn. I'm Kyle. So we're the website's Banking Crowded, not baking cookies, like banking like money. Bankingcrowded.com. We're a digital bank for nonprofits in the US. So I would love to chat and, really thank you so much for having me. And it was great to be on the panel with you guys today.
Thanks, Kyle. All right, Eric, you have the final word.
I have the final word. Oh my gosh, there's so much pressure, guys. Appreciate the time. Thank you so much for inviting me onto this great panel. I love having this conversation. As far as the future of AI, I'm going to go the opposite of rather storytelling. I'm going to go actually data. And I think I said earlier in the beginning, I serve on the Fundraising Effectiveness Project board as well as the Giving Institute board. And I said earlier, giving is on the way down. When you look at the data, it's always we've always tracked it, but honestly, generosity is on the increase. And I think if we have better benchmarking tools and better opportunities out there to be able to see what is actually happening, we can actually change the trajectory of impact and generosity into our space. And so what we at Avid do, I want to share this out for free. This is free. This is not a sales gimmick at all, period. This is not a sales gimmick. This is for our industry to be able to help nonprofits see what they're doing. There's a benchmark tool that I want to give out to everybody for free. And what it is if you put your CRM on this system, you can see in this moment exactly how we are operating against every other nonprofit out there. We have 100 nonprofits on. By the end of this month, we'll have 1,000 because a consulting agency is bringing over all of their CRM data to be able to see this. So when you look at Giving USA or FEP or M&R, you're looking at 6 and 12 and 18 months behind the time or what's going on. So what just happened here in this city about 2 months ago for the nonprofit industry, you can see in real time exactly what's going on. So you can actually look at the donor retention rate. So I recommend, I'm a big believer in data drives everything that we do. Data drives our strategy, our creative, and it provides our results. And I think that's where AI is going to be able to control all of that and be able to help us have greater impact in our communities through generosity and benchmarking and making sure we're doing the right things. Because we as nonprofit leaders, what is it? The asterisk on every single job description I've always created is other duties is assigned. And we have a lot of those. And so this is going to make our jobs more efficient and make our decisions data informed. So thank you for having me, everybody.
Thanks, Eric. All right. And with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists for sharing their insights today. Also want to give a big thank you to our audience. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something that will benefit the work that you do on a daily basis. All right. That is it for me today. It has been a pleasure speaking with you all. Thank you once again and have a nice rest of the day, everyone. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.